teacher. I don't do this lecture stuff, so I'm going to be asking you some questions. All right. If you're an undergraduate student, all right, how many people here are undergraduate students? Please raise your hand if you're an undergraduate student right now. All right, thank you for being here. People tell you this all the time, and you know, it's really true. You guys are going to be running this state. You guys already are running this state. So think about how you want this institution and your state to be run. I'm going to talk a little bit about the tenure system. All right. That may strike you as really, really, really boring. You know, Professor Gross talked a little bit about baseball. This is inside baseball, right? This is how this university runs itself. Parts of it you probably don't see. However, if you know anything about baseball, you know the important stuff happens in the off season, right? It happens when the players are being hired. It happens when their conditions are being negotiated. That is also the case here. Now, if you're an undergraduate student, let me ask you, how many of you, raise your hand, if you know right now which of your professors are on the tenure track or not on the tenure track, fixed term? And if so, if they're on the tenure track, do you know where they are on the tenure track? Raise your hand if you could just answer those questions about your professor. Okay, we've got one person. Look out for this man, he's dangerous. Yeah. Okay, you know, one person knows. All right, and you guys may ask, well, how does this affect me? Well, let me ask you one thing. First of all, we heard earlier today that North Carolina's high school teachers have lost their tenure system. All right, how many of you are thinking you might be a high school teacher? All right, you guys are the heroes. So, do you understand what that means for you as a high school teacher? What does that mean for you? All right, this is worth finding out. People don't necessarily want you to know about this. It is important to know about this. So what does it mean? You may imagine that all of your professors are the same in the way they're treated by the university. I'm here to tell you they are not. We have got a system with two very different ways of hiring, firing, and maintaining faculty. We've got, on the one hand, people who are on contracts that may be 1 semester long or a year long and are rehired at the end of each contract. We have, on the other hand, people who are on a system where they're hired for a probationary period, which is usually around 6 years, in which they need to prove themselves as scholars, as researchers, at which point they are granted what is known as tenure, which makes them full participants in the governance of the university. If you are not part of that system, you are not represented in Faculty Senate. If you are fixed term, you are not protected when you speak out in an event like this. And I'm going to apologize if I am wrong here, but I am willing to say that I'm probably the first fixed term faculty member you've heard from today. Is that true? Yeah? You know why? Because fixed term faculty members are scared. Okay? Woo! I've seen this happen. I saw this happen in a meeting in my own department last week, where the future of fixed term faculty members was being debated. And no one wanted to stand up and say, yes, actually I need health insurance. Some people did. Some very brave people did. And we need to appreciate them. But we need to know that not everyone is being treated equally here. Now, that's not to say that tenure is everything. Maybe there's a good future with some other way of organizing our teaching system. But if you're an undergrad, here's what you need to know for yourself. All right, how does this matter for you? If you have a professor whose title is assistant professor, that is a person who has been hired on the tenure track who does not have tenure yet. That means that person has been hired to do research as well as teach. And their primary concern for the first 6 years or so here is going to be getting tenure, which is primarily, in almost every case, awarded on the basis of the research that they do. Most of these people are fantastic teachers as well. But you should know, when you're in that situation, that when it comes down, at the end of the day, they know that their job, their future, depends on their research. Be aware of it. If you have somebody whose title is associate professor, that is somebody who has tenure. That person can be fired, but it's really, 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 really hard. So that is a person who can speak out, who can go forward here and try to make a difference in this university. If you have a person whose title is just professor, plain old professor, that's actually somebody who has ascended to the top of their field. But it's a ladder. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. But think of all the other titles that ECU has. What have you heard? Other titles you've heard for your professors, besides assistant professor, associate professor, and professor?
Lecturer.
Lecturer. What the heck does that mean? Anybody got any ideas? Alright, you guys need to know this stuff. Alright, so think about that. A lecturer is usually somebody who is hired off the tenure track on a contract of determinate length, who may not have a job in the years coming. That's going to affect what they do. What if you find someone whose title is teaching instructor? Also somebody who is off the tenure track, fixed term, may have health insurance, for instance, may not, depending on how they were hired. What if you find someone whose title is teaching assistant professor or teaching associate professor, right? Same thing. Over in the medical department, clinical associate professor, clinical assistant professor, same thing. So be aware of those. Look into it. If you look on any department's website here, you'll notice that they care because any department's website here pretty much breaks down their faculty by their titles, by their levels, by their rankings. This is how the university works. So you need to know. Another thing you need to know is that the pay scale is vastly different. In my department, for instance, English, this is rough, but for the most part, fixed-term faculty make around half of what tenure stream faculty are making. Be aware of that when you're thinking about how much time someone's willing to give you. Most fixed-term people are teaching loads of around 4 classes, often introductory classes, and they're not getting paid very much for it. Be aware of this. All right. And how many of these people are there? You know, you may have heard the term adjunct. You may have heard that these people are sort of hired on to fill in gaps. Well, according to ECU's fact book, which it puts out about itself, for 2012 to 2013, fixed-term faculty members made up 41.8% of faculty here at ECU. That's a lot. That's almost half of the people that you have contact with who are off tenure track. Be aware of that. Be aware that this also falls unevenly by gender. According to that same ECU fact book, contingent faculty represent the percentage of the contingent faculty, that's non-tenure track, who are women, 58.4%. So, if it's somehow seems to you like there are more women around here and yet men are still running things, it's true. Okay. It's happening. Be aware of what's going on, you know, when your professors are hired and what happens to them. All right. Well, here's something that I think, though, is important. You guys, as voters in North Carolina, as people who are going to send your kids to school in North Carolina, can make choices about what kinds of schools you want to see. Can make choices about these systems. And you know, I'll recommend everybody, if you have younger siblings who are going to school, if you have people you know who are you know, trying to figure out what school to go to, tell them to look at the percentage of tenure track versus non-tenure track faculty. It's important. And let me then ask a different question. All right, we know we have a lot of undergrads here. All right, how many faculty do we have here? Raise your hand if you are on the tenure track but not tenured. All right. People are under a lot of pressure. Be nice to them. Okay. Yeah. All right. Raise your hand. All right. Raise your hand if you have tenure. All right. People, the people who are fighting the big fights here. Appreciate them. And raise your hand if you are a fixed-term faculty member. All right. You people are doing the hardest work at this university. Appreciate that. All right. I should say the hardest teaching work, because there are a lot of people doing other work that is very hard too. So, what I want to ask you guys is, have you guys told your students any of this stuff I just mentioned today?
Yes.
Yes. All right. I want to make sure that you do. First of all, when it comes to the end of every semester, it's time to do those surveys that used to be called SOIS and are now called SPOTS. All right. I teach writing. One of the things that is most important in writing, we all know this is, you need to know who you're writing to, right? And you need to know why. So, tell your students, the people you are writing to are the people that are assessing me. And explain to them what they're assessing you on. If they're assessing you on your tenure case, that's important. If they're assessing you on your contract renewal as a fixed-term faculty member, that's important. Explain to your students what the system is. That is not asking for, you know, sycophantically glowing reviews, although those are nice sometimes. But that is telling people the truth and giving them the knowledge they need in order to make this system run. So, I gotta encourage everybody, go out there and find out the truth about how this system works. Find out the truth about your university and make the choices to make this the university you want it to be. The best university for the students, the best university for North Carolina. Thanks.